Welcome to Women in Power Active, an initiative started by UR Sportswear to empower women to find their own active adventure. I'm your host, Jacalyn Gross. Today, we are interviewing my good friend, Tiffany Chenault. She is a runner who has a goal of running 50 states, and she wants to do a marathon or a half marathon. And so we check in on her progress. I originally interviewed Tiffany in January of 2021. So we are just catching up on her goal and also just checking in on how she's doing. I think you'll really enjoy this episode, but if you haven't listened to the first one in January of 2021, you can go to YouTube and check out the UR Sportswear channel, and you'll be able to find part one of Tiffany Chenault, Women in Power Active. So start there and then come back here and listen to the rest of the episode. Like the last time we talked, you were going through and wanting to run a marathon or half marathon in 50 states, and you're writing a book on your experiences with running through those states. And I wanted to catch up on where you are now.
You know, it feels like it was so forever ago. Well, I originally, right, my goal was supposed to be accomplished in 2020, but right, the world stopped.
Yes.
So that did not happen.
Yeah.
And so the reset, or the kind of the recalculation, was 2020, nothing happened. 2021, things got better. People were getting vaccinated, and I did, because I had 4 states left. And so 2021, I went out to Oregon. That was one of the states. So it's Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and Hawaii are the last 4 states. And so I went out in 2021 to Oregon, to Portland, to run. And that was interesting because at that time it was, well, you can stay in the hotel. We're not going to do room service. Kind of like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I'm like, oh, but it was cool. So I got to explore Portland and ran the Portland marathon and half marathon. And so I did the half marathon. I think people were excited because, you know, everyone had been not running. So that was a cool race to run. So I did that. And then 2022, oh, this is 2022, right? Like, right.
Yep.
I was like, wait, where am I? So that was one. I'm like, oh, 3 more to go. What am I going? 3 more to go. And so I was trying to figure it all out. And I found 2 races a week apart in Idaho and Wyoming, because I live in Boston. It didn't make sense to go out west and then come back east, and then go out west and come back east. So I found 2 races a week apart. I'm like, well, you know what? Vacation. I'm just going to just do it and get it done. And so this year, late May and early June, I did the Coeur d'Alene half marathon in Idaho, and then the Grand Teton half marathon in Wyoming. And so that was this year. And so now what's left is Hawaii for next year. So I'm still trying to plot and plan like what to do with that. So that that happened this year. So 1 more left.
Yeah. That's so exciting. It's so close.
So close. I know, right?
Yeah, and then I got to meet you in person in Seattle. It was great. And
it was fun. That was so much fun. My partner, he was like, oh my God, so you 2 know each other for like how many years? I'm like, no, it hasn't even been years. He was like, oh, I feel like you guys have known each other forever. I'm like, that's the people I draw. Like, like, you know, like, oh my God, if we lived in the same city, we'd be hanging out all the time. Like, yes.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
That was like fun. It was so fun.
It was
so
short,
but fun.
Yeah, I know. It was very short. It was good to see, like, take you to Pike's Place and see some parts of Seattle and experience some things. But yeah, it was super short. I want to kind of go back to before this all happened. There was something else that kind of happened to you and slowed you down a bit. Do you mind talking about?
No. Yeah. So again, you know, 2020 was when everything happened, right? Everything stopped. And in 2020, making sure I get my dates right.
Yeah.
That's when I found out I had cancer. It was Thanksgiving of 2020 that I found that out. And like, wait, what? And it was stage 0, which I didn't even know there was a stage 0, but the stage 0, and the doctors caught it early enough. Like, we see it, it's there, but we can like do, you know, we've got a plan. We need to talk about your plan and treatment. And so I always tell people that for me, when I heard it, everyone's like, you know, are you okay? You know, because my mother passed away from cancer, but my cancer knowledge is my mom had it. It was, she was at stage 4 and was told she had 2 weeks to live. There you go. So for me, I'm like stage 0. So, but it's not stage 4 and I have more than 2 weeks to live. Okay. Okay. And so I didn't really not freak out, but I just like, what does this mean? And so I guess the stressful part was the treatment. Like, do I want to get a lumpectomy? Do I need to get mastectomy? Like, how does this work? What's the best way to go about it? And I think that was the stressful part of the treatment. Do I do radiation? Do I need to have chemo? Like, I don't know. This is new for me. And thing I appreciate with my cancer team, because you get a team and everyone's there to help you and help you try to make the best decision for you. And so I ended up deciding to get a lumpectomy because it was in my right breast. And I had a lumpectomy and then they missed some of it. Like, really? So I had to go back and get what they call a re-incision and to go back and get the rest because I couldn't see, because your breast, it's not like it's solid, right? When you're laying back, it's kind of fluid. So they were like trying to get the markers, like, we think it's over in this spot here. And so that happened. So in the process of this happened in 2021, because I had enough time to like think through. And that's the beauty of it. Wasn't like, you've got this cancer, you need to make a decision like now, but like, you've got time, think through it. Don't take too much time, but you've got plenty of time. And so 2021 was when all the surgeries were happening. And within that, there's a lot of recovery. And because it's the breast, I couldn't run. It was like 6 weeks here, another 4 weeks there. But the beauty of what the doctors had told me, because I'm a runner, because I'm active, my recovery was a lot shorter than most, which I appreciate. And so I couldn't run, but I could walk, I could move, I could do a little something. So that was helpful. So I went through the lumpectomy, I went through the re-incision and the healing part. And so when I was able to run a bit, then I could kind of get my momentum back. And really, to kind of go back for a second, running in 2021 in Oregon, that was I'm good. I'm reclaiming like my body, my boobs, my health. And I wanted to I need to run. So that was that victory for me. After the healing process, which I didn't know, it's this journey, then you get radiation. So I didn't have to do chemo, but I had to do radiation. So later on that year, then I went through my radiation treatment. And that's very humbling because you go in like every day, like 5 days a week. And like, here I am lying down, showing the world all of my goodies. So that was a humbling experience. So I went through radiation and healing from that. And so when 2022 happened this year, I'm like, well, I have these 2 races. I need to start training. And I was still trying to come back. And I got an opportunity to get a bib for the Boston Marathon, which was in April. And I'm like, I'm not a marathon person. I'm a half marathon person, but it's the Boston Marathon. And, as you know, everyone, it's like Boston Marathon, because I live in Boston. People always ask me, have you run Boston? I'm like, no, but I've run the Flying Pig. I've run in Paris. Have you run Boston? I'm like, seriously? I've run, people don't care unless it's Boston. I'm like, but I've run a marathon. No, wasn't Boston. I'm like, oh my. So I had this opportunity through Black Girls Run, and we have a relationship with the BAA, who they do the Boston Marathon, of like, here's a bib, we have extra bibs. If you want one, I'm like, And so I had a moment and said, you know what, I'm going to use this opportunity to train for my 2 half marathons. So for me, running Boston Marathon wasn't I'm running Boston. It was I'm going to run Boston to train for the 2 half marathons. I've got like a month and a half after this is over. So people were like, give me a little side eye. I'm like, it doesn't matter. So I trained for the Boston Marathon, and I trained in 8 weeks. So having run 2 previous marathons and 14 weeks, 12 weeks, I was like, I'm still not fully recovered, but I'm able to do something. And it's all about staying healthy and staying fit. I'm like, I can do it. Wasn't going for time. I was going for the experience and the training to be stronger for the next 2 half marathons I was going to do. So I did Boston, and I will say that was an amazing experience. I mean, completely amazing. I'm glad I did it, but I'm good. I'm done. I don't have to do it again. I know there are people who are like every year they do Boston, which is great, but it's very interesting. The crowds, the support, the city loves this race. And so I was able to do it. And it was like I got a little choked up near the finish line because you're like coming in the city. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. God, so ugly face of tears. But I did it. And I was happy I did it. So now I can tell people when they ask, have you done Boston? Yes. Yes, I have. Don't ask me again. Yes. You happy? Good. So I did it. But that helped me for the other 2 half marathons I did in my other 2 states. And so when I went to like Idaho, and they're like, oh, this is good training for marathon. And I would say, I did a marathon in Boston. This is just to, finish off my journey. People gave me a look like, it kind of works the opposite. You do have to train for a marathon, not you do a marathon to get ready for your half. So yeah, so that's where I am with that. And recently, guess what, 3-4 weeks ago, I just had my last surgery, breast surgery. It's the final one, so it's all good. And so now I'm thinking, well, I've got one more state left. So come January, I'm gonna actually start training for a marathon, because I think that's where I'm going now. Like I'll train for a marathon, get ready for my halves, to do a marathon on my birthday, which will help me for getting ready to do Hawaii. So yeah, so that is my plan. So right now, like I told you, like I'm walking now. I've got another 3 weeks to keep walking and like letting myself heal. And then I'll start running a little bit and just kind of getting back into the swing of things. But then come January, that'll be my motivation as I train for a marathon on my birthday to kind of get back in the groove. But it happens, right? It happens. We have setbacks, life.
Wow. So you found out you had cancer in 2020, and it's been 2 years that you're kind of through your last surgery 2 years later, basically.
Yeah, I mean, because I think I didn't realize that it's a slow process, because you get a procedure done, then you have to heal from that. That takes weeks. Then you get another procedure done, then you have to heal from that. Right? It's not a quick thing. And so from first surgery, then I had to heal from that, and second surgery, heal from that. And then once all that's done, then it's like now you can do radiation, and so the treatment process, the way I did it, having a lumpectomy, it's time consuming, as opposed to if I went for a mastectomy, just cut them off. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. So that's what I've learned through this. Like it's this process. And so a lot has happened in 2 years, surprisingly, through all of this. When I think through it, I'm like, God, I went through a lot in a couple of years. And this was with stage 0. So I can only imagine people at different stages, what they may have to go through, or how cancer impacts their body, depending on where it's located, and the kind of treatment that's needed, depending on where the cancer is.
Yeah. And it's been good that you've been able to be active through recovery for you specifically, because that's something that's good for your mental health. But so I guess it kind of means a lot that you are active, because that was something that made you more healthy for these surgeries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made me healthier and have a recovery time that was better than most. And my doctors, and I told them, this is who I am, and so I want to make sure you take good care of me. But I told them, Mom, I'm a runner, so when can this be done so I can go back and run? It's like, okay. So they all know, like my whole team of doctors, they know, the doctors and nurses, social worker, like Tiffany's a runner, she needs to be out running. So they all knew this. I'm like, oh, yes. And interesting, that was kind of a common bond for some of my doctors who actually were runners, and they were like, oh, so I gave them my running resume of like, listen, I got to be out on the pavement, so you can't be late for this too long. And so I definitely stood out with them. So that was helpful too. So I think, that was a commonality that I helped, and I think they appreciate it, like me. And so part of my last surgery was reconstruction. I had implants put in, And I told the doctor, like, I can't have them too big because I run, right? I run, so I don't need big jugs, even though people do have them, which is fine. I was like, I just need little bitty girls with a little bit of bounce. It's like, okay. Because I'm like, because that's what I said, because I run, so I can't, I don't want, big, I just need just enough and can get in the sports bra, and so I can go. And he's like, we'll see what we can do. I'm like, thank you. So I don't know right now because I'm still swollen, so they're still going down. So I'm like, I told him I don't want them big, but it's like the swelling will go down again, and that's another 6 months of healing till they're finally kind of in their place. So again, it's still the waiting time and the healing time, but I'm going to be able to run a bit, but I won't know my true shape and form until 6 months from now.
Last time we talked, we were working on your book, and I wanted to know where you are in that progress as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, part of my book was supposed to be done in 2021, but I said to my editor, I'm like, I got stuff. Surgery, this cancer thing. They're like, that's fine. So my goal is to, by December of this year, submit it to the editors and be like, here you go, because they said the turnaround time will be probably anywhere from 8 to 10 months. So once they get it and they review it, corrections, and then get it out there. So I definitely want the book out next year when I finish my last race. I think that will be great. So during the summer of this year, I've been working on just the final tweaks and edits and kind of doing some rewrites and adding some things, because this process is slow, but it's so layered, right? This journey that I've been on, I mean, there's so much. And so not my struggle, but part of the editing process is, how do I tell this story that anyone can read it, will be interested in it? And I don't have to go like, this happened in this day, this happened, and like, that's boring. But just to kind of get some of the tidbits, some of these cool vignettes of like, through this time of, we talk about this, running and during the time of Black Lives Matter and Say Her Name and the Trump presidency, and going in all of these states of like, what has this journey been like in terms of this intersection of race and gender and class, but then also understanding geography and place and these spaces? Like, what is it like to be a Black woman going to kind of white spaces when you're seen as maybe a threat, or you don't belong, or you're even just invisible? What does that mean? And I've got so many kind of tells from state 1 to state 49, where it's not just that person was having a bad day, or that's just a random thing. It's like, no, there are patterns with this. And just remind people, I'm a sociologist, so that's my wheelhouse of, I study people in society and communities. I teach at Salem State University in Salem, Massachusetts. So if you're like Salem, Massachusetts, think of like the home of the witches, Nathaniel Hawthorne, House of the Seven Gables, a lot of witches, a lot of spooky history. So I teach in Salem, and my area of expertise, if you will, is around like urban sociology, communities, race and gender and class, and social inequality. So those are my things. So this semester I'm teaching at least intro soc and the Black woman, which will be really interesting and fun to teach. So I can't wait. And so doing this through a runner's lens as well as a sociological lens, I have a lot of critiques and insights that I want to share with people. But just how do I tell that story in a way, because I can't do it all, but what are like the good little bits that I can tell, just to give you a sample. And then it's a part of my healing through grief, right? Because I started this journey because I lost my mom. And I call this kind of like ground zero. So when you have a loss of someone or something, and then how do you go from this place of grief, depression, just hurt, pain, to coming on the other side of it, to realize the hurt will be there. Like, I will always grieve my mother, and that's not going to go away, but I'm functional and it's okay. And how do you get to that point? And so for me, through this running journey, I have gotten to that point. I don't know if I would have gotten there if I hadn't gone on this running journey. I mean, I don't know. I can't talk in hindsight. But this has definitely been a way of healing for me. And then on top of that, unexpected things. I found out I had cancer, and then 2020 happened. Like, can't make this stuff up on this journey. Um, and then how it ends. So it's yeah. So it's ever evolving. And so I had some incidents happen in state 48 and 49, Idaho and Wyoming. I'm like, this could go in the book. Can't make this stuff up either. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Ooh. So, things keep happening. I'm like, I have to stop at some point, right? Like, maybe it might be a second book, but like, I can't keep going. Just like, here it is. So I'm trying to like restrain myself. I'm like, oh, and this happened. Let me tell you. But we will see. But yeah, but the book is coming, and even along the way, I was a model, or they call it talent, for REI.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened too.
Yep.
If anyone, get your REI summer 2022 catalog, you might see the space. You will see the space. So that happens. I've been doing so it's been like, it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I got a book though, got to focus, get that book out, turn it in. The goal is by December, send it to the publisher. And then, they'll, again, from that is like a 8 to 10 month process. So hopefully by 2023, if not 2024, will be out.
So we were talking about your book. I wanted to also touch on the thing that I feel like you breezed over, is that, and sorry if this is too much, but your mom passing away from cancer, and then having found out that you also had cancer. Like, how did you process that? Or did you realize that you were processing that?
Throughout the journey, I was able to process it even more, because it was just, so when she passed away, I mean, it was such a shocker, and it happened so quickly. And, I was still wounded by that. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? Lose your mom, lose your best friend. And so, as I started this journey in running to kind of like heal, then when I had my own diagnosis, we got like the treatment plan like going, then I really started to think about my mom and her situation, and where we were at different points.
Mm-hmm.
And think about all the things that she went through, because she went through chemo and radiation, and just hearing the stories that she would tell about how she was feeling and how she couldn't taste things, and just kind of reflecting back on that and what I went through. I'm like, oh, my mom had so much strength to kind of keep going. And so my honor to her and myself is that, not saying that the stage of cancer that I had was not anything. They caught it early. And it's weird for me to talk about myself as a cancer survivor, though I am just at a different phase of it, but I am. And so for me to kind of keep going, of like, getting radiation sucked, but I think back like, but my mom had it worse. So it's okay. Just, it's okay. Thinking about, yes, I had lumpectomy and they took part of my breasts away, but I'm still here. My mom is not. Right. And so just kind of thinking back, those things. Or I was telling a friend of mine, when I run, I always think about, that's my homage to like, I'm still here to honor my mom, to honor myself, because, life is hard and stuff happens, and, nothing's really easy, but we are still here. We've gone through a pandemic, and for many of us, some of us aren't. I mean, we're still here. And so I always have those touchstones thinking back on my mom's experience and mine. And it's not as bad as it could have been, but just to try to keep going. And so, yeah, I think about that a lot. Or even when I think about when I'm running and it's hard and I'm cursing, I'm like, but I'm still here. And I've gone through so much, and I'm still here, right? And I think we don't think about those things. And so I think that's a legacy my mom has left me. I mean, if I could, I would not run. I'd rather have my mom here with me, hands down, without a question. But because she's not, and thinking about all the stuff she went through, that it would be a dishonor and a disservice not to continue to try to find some joy or try to find like some bit of solitude in running. And also, she put on a brave face. I don't know if she talked to my dad or my aunts, but she seemed fearless. And I know for many times, for many of us, and I'll talk about myself. I mean, I'm not like I'm always scared, but going in situations that you don't know that are unfamiliar, it's scary. And I was going in a situation with my cancer of like, I've never had cancer before. I don't know how this works. Like it's the unknown and it's frightening, but I've got to like make some choices and put a foot forward and let's see how it goes. And I think, I try not to be not fearless, but I own up to I am scared. There is fear, there is the unknown, and it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it. And hopefully it will work out. But if it doesn't, then I can learn a lesson from it because it's not always going to be perfect. And so with that, I've also learned to just kind of push through fear and not let it cripple me, because you can go either way, right? If fear can paralyze you and cripple you, or it can motivate you. And I've been on both ends. So I'm not saying that, I haven't been paralyzed by it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, and I'm going to run through it. It's just a process. Everyone has their own process differently. And I think, a bit fearful after my mom passed of how do I go on with myself? What do I do? How do I live my life out? Like, I don't know. And I think I know I was paralyzed probably for a couple of years until I found running as a release to like, you got to get out there. You got to do something. So, again, everyone has their own journey, and not to say that, you can't be fearless. But it's a process, but I've learned that. I mean, again, through the 50 states, well, I guess 49, but through this journey of, going to places and spaces from like unfamiliar, stranger danger. I don't know, but I'm here. I need to do this thing, and hopefully nothing will happen, but I don't know. And I did it. So, and again, they haven't all been pretty. So I'm not gonna be like, it's all been great. Like it's been messy and ugly, and there's been situations. I'm not gonna, paint it all lovely, but I've survived it and I have stories to tell. And stories to share.
And I totally agree with you. It's like you can either just stop or you can keep going. And that's kind of like our only two options. And so, yeah, sometimes we get slowed down. I always think that like quotes, like, doesn't matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop. And which I'm probably butchering, but like I do think that in my head when it's getting really tough, it's like, okay, as long as you don't stop, you're fine. Like you could be, slogging through, but moving forward.
Right. There's no time period for grief. So maybe for some people, like again, for me, it was 2 years. Like I can tell you the moment and the things that happened. For other people, it may take a decade. And for some people, it may be a couple of weeks. I mean, right. Like I'm saying, you don't know people's experiences or their emotions or where they are in terms of kind of pushing through, however they do it. But yeah, it's like, you can't let it paralyze you. You can't let it stop you, because then what's the point of life, right?
Right.
And I think when I kind of snapped out of it, if you will, I'm like, it would be a dishonor and a service to my mother that, if I just did nothing and just kind of stayed where I was.
Yeah.
But again, that was the process to come to that point of just with all the emotions and all the feels. And like I said, then, on my journey, and I don't know if I got the cancer diagnosis earlier than later in my journey, how that would have gone too as well. So the fact that I was, 2020, and at that time I had finished 46 states, right? I've been on this whole thing when I was diagnosed. So it might've been different if it was like stage 5, I just started. I was like, what? And then +2 being early, still processing the griefs early on with my mom. I mean, right? Don't know.
I do know you've had some grief or pain show up in different ways in your body.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, there's something called like intergenerational trauma that it's a real thing in terms of how our bodies hold on to trauma and grief. And so for me, there's this stigma about being kind of a strong Black woman in the Black community, where that means that you cannot be vulnerable, you cannot show emotions, you're taking care of everyone else, like you're not even showing feelings. So when my mom had passed, for example, it was that, well, I'm just going to keep going. I'm, just, which is crazy because when you lose someone, you can take the time to grieve and feel a loss. But I was like, oh no, I can't. I have to, I can't show grief. I can't show being hurt because of the negative stereotypes around that. So just briefly within actually just the Black community, but within American culture, there's this romanticism of kind of the strong Black woman. So we see it in movies and books and literature. That's something that is noble. That's something that Black women should ascribe to. But it's hurtful and deadly, and it's harmful because you're keeping those emotions in, and it's in your body, and that has impacts on your health, your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So for me, keeping all of this in, it's like, no, I'm going to be strong. It's going to keep going, and not having that release was not healthy, was not good. And it showed up in different ways. So one of the things that I found, I mentioned to you, like my pelvic area started to hurt. So, just trying to, after my last surgery, and I was trying to walk. I'm like, walking kind of hurts. I'm not even running. I'm just walking. Like, what's this in my thigh? Like, what's happening? And I went to the doctor, and she had mentioned you should look at going to like a pelvic PT. I'm like, a pelvic PT, a pelvic physical therapist. I didn't know that even existed. I'm like, I haven't had a baby or anything like that. Like, I'll try anything because I feel this pain. And I went, and there was so much stress and tension in those muscles around like your groin area. I'm like, I didn't know. And my PT was like, you should try breathing and meditation, because I think we think about when you get stressed, like people hold like in their back, maybe in their neck. For a lot of women, they hold it in their pelvic area. And I did not know that. And a lot of my stress was held down there. But yeah, so my body has gone through, again, from when I started the 50 states journey, 2015 to now, like I see the difference in my body. And again, my body's gone through a lot, but I see the difference in my body and how she operates, and the feelings, and be more attuned to the feelings of my body and where I am. And I'm like, ooh, like stress. So a good example, during the pandemic, we were teaching online. Like I said, my hair falls out, but my hair was growing, and I wasn't on campus. My hair was growing, and I was like, okay, good. And in the spring of this year, we went back to teaching face to face, and sure enough, the hair that I had that was getting long, falling out. It's like, wow. And so I was like, this is why. And so just, I acknowledge it. I know exactly what caused it. And so like, what can I do to try to kind of reduce some of that? But yeah. And you might see a picture when the Boston Marathon, for their 125th, I think, running of it. They were back in person. They did it in October. Normally the Boston Marathon's in April. And I was on a panel, and there's pictures of like, oh, look at my hair. And then 6 months later or whatnot, I'm like, and look at my not so hair. Okay. And I was like, what was that change? I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what that change was. We were back teaching, and stress, just, yeah. So in our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very stressful time to teach as well, because you're kind of just coming back to it. So like going back after COVID, getting used to that, being in person. I noticed this about myself, is that like when I do get in crowds, I would start to not breathe as much if I wasn't wearing a mask. I would just take like little breaths, because I always did that when like if I'm around somebody with cigarette smoke, same thing. I would just do that. But I realized I was starting to do that like in crowds of people. And I was like, what is this? Because I felt like I was like, oh, I'm dizzy. I'm like, I'm not breathing. So I mean, like these things that we're not really even like acknowledging that it's happening to us from this pandemic. Like, I think it's like there's so much. And so like you having to go back to work is just a bunch of added stress of like being in person, being around people, having this added layer of stress, of worry, you know, that you don't even realize what little things your body's doing to try to like protect you, you know?
Oh my God, exactly. To let you know, like, hey, this is not okay. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, and it's acknowledging that, because I keep telling people, I'm like, we have all been traumatized. We've all gone through, this kind of trauma. And so
Yeah.
we need to be kinder, more humbler, not a word, but more humble to ourselves and others. And then the fact is now that we're all being kind of not forced, but like, okay, and go back to, face to face and just kind of act as if everything's okay. We're still grieving, right? It's still a loss. You can't go from this traumatic event and be like, okay, and back in you go.
Yeah.
Like that's a shock to the body and the system.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, no, still not there yet. And saying like, I'm not there yet. And you have to be okay with it. And if not, that's too bad. Like, I'm not ready. You know, I need a moment. And just kind of saying that to yourself, to ourselves. Of like, no. Because I know when I was running in Portland, sorry, second my eye, Portland, I mean, there are people who are on the state's journey that even though the height of the pandemic, we're still, because, some states are like, whatever, that's another conversation, another day. They would still be running these races and flying to go to these places. I'm like, seriously? Like, don't run for a year. Like, it's okay. And folks still were going and doing. I'm like, no. Like, as much as I tell my doctors, like, I'm a runner, when am I gonna get back out? Because I think we're all addicted. But just, also the fine line of like, I'm not gonna put myself at like, no, it's okay. Like, I'll get to my states when I get to them. Like,
Mhm.
it's okay. I wasn't trying to speed it up, or even now of like, oh, is it safe? I mean, it's gotten better, but just being mindful. Like, if I can't do it, I can't do it. And I think that's part of, I call it rebranding my strength, of just saying, you know what, nope, I can't do it, or I don't feel it, or this is all I can do, and I'm good with that. And I think that's part of the honesty we have to have with ourselves. She can't do it all. It just cannot happen.
Yeah. I feel like once the pandemic kind of like lifted a bit and we kind of got back to it, I felt like everything just like went super fast.
Yeah, like, whoa, slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything just like sped up and I'm like, I'm trying to do all of these things and I just feel like I'm not keeping up with any of them. But yeah, I think that was an overall feeling of just getting back into things. Now that we have had these 2 years, how do you feel about trail running now?
I'm open. I am open. Before I was not.
Yeah.
I am open to try, because I've gone to some like sort of kind of trails, not really, that, and the scenery turns to different kind of landscape.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned a while ago, I think there was something in Michigan where it was like not like a relay team, but like, it's like, I'll be on a team, I'll do a trail part of the way. Like, I'm open
Mhm.
with other people. Like, would I like just go trail running by myself? No. But if there was like a team or other people doing with me, I would be open. Yes. Just to say, like, again, I'm not gonna be a hypocrite. I'm like, I don't know, I'm fearful, it's weird, it's different, but I will try it. I haven't officially done it, but
Mhm.
I'm open. And I just need to, have a tutorial on, proper shoes, and because it's a little bit different than, different kinds of running, and just
Yeah.
get a tutorial. But I'm open, maybe start off with a 5K, maybe a 10K. I don't know about a half marathon or a marathon, but small steps. So I'm open. So you're
Yeah.
gonna have to school me, but I'm
Yeah.
open to doing it.
Yeah, the trails by you and by me are both pretty technical, so definitely would be a little bit different running, but I'm sure you could start out with something that's like flat and grassy, maybe,
Yes,
or it
yes,
gets
please.
like very roots
Yes.
and
Yes, we
like
can do flat and grassy,
yeah,
and just start there, maybe a flat and grassy 5K. Like, okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm open to baby steps. So
yeah,
I'm not,
okay.
and we'll see how that goes. But my heart, I know my heart's in like the urban running spaces. I'm
Yeah,
like, yay. but I would try different things.
Yeah.
So see,
we've come a long way.
yeah, from hell no. Oh my God, why do you do that to yourself on purpose? Oh my God. So like, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
People have said they loved it. I should
Yeah.
try it.
You're going to like cool, pretty places to race. And like, you could be in cool, pretty places on a trail as well as the roads. So just think about that.
Okay, I'm open because I think part of that evolution is running it, like you said, like I've been running in some of the last couple states have been gorgeous, so they weren't trails per se, but it's like I'm around kind of this naturey setting, and I'm like, there's not much around. I'm like, this is pretty, it's okay, like it wasn't bad. So I'm just trying to picture this without like the road and the cows, and just like we're just surrounded. As long as there's a clear pathway to get there, I think that's a thing. I think I'm still not in trauma or shock, but when I did the race in the forest with the freaking bears, and they were like, just follow the flags. I'm like, what does that mean, follow the flags? Like, I don't understand. Like, just stay on the left side of the flags. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know. And I got lost. So if I just that was like, I'm gonna die in the bears in Florida, and this will be pretty.
And Florida,
exactly. Of like, of all the places.
I know. This is where I'm gonna go.
And this is where it all ends. Like, right here. This is where it all ends. Like, what the fuck? Really? Wow. So for me, that is my, oh hell no, I'm not doing that ever again. Which right now I'm like there. But again, if it's a 5K, we can start off slow, again, learn some technical things. I'm open. Yes.
We are doing Women in Power Active. Do you have any words of empowerment that you may have learned in these past 2 years since we caught up the last time?
Oh my goodness. I got words. I always have lots of words. I think a good word in terms of one thing I can say is boundaries, right? Like, it's important to know yourself and have boundaries, so other people or things know your perimeters, right? Because again, talking about before, so many times we as women are like, yes, I'm trying to take care of everyone and do all the things, but it's important for us to be like, I have boundaries. I've set perimeters of like, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, and it's okay. And so I think that's important to establish, what are your boundaries, and if people cross them, like either how to kind of push back or be like, I told you no, like, kind of hold true to your boundaries. If it makes people uncomfortable or unhappy, that's not your problem. That is not your issue. That is theirs. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because a lot of times we tend to move our boundaries, or like, oh, that's okay. It's like, no, have your boundaries that that are good for you in whatever aspects. And then again, if people don't like them or it upsets them, just keep in mind that that is not your issue. That is their issue for them to deal with, because you've established your boundaries. And that's so important. I mean, that's one thing that I've learned that I want. If I can say anything, establish your boundaries, and those who have feelings about it, those are their feelings, got nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you.
And I definitely I still want to have that conversation about boundaries too, with you and a group of women. I think it would be really good to talk that through.
Yes.
Just like how we deal with that, because it is so hard to set your boundaries. Like, I have a terrible time in the moment. I mean, I realize it later when I'm like, why did I sign up for this?
Right. But I think, what we were talking about, I think it's important, because if we think about, again, the trauma that, our body holds, and then our feelings, how we feel about ourselves because we didn't establish those boundaries, that's not healthy, right? That is unhealthy, and that is not good. It sometimes gets toxic. So, right. So, I mean, not like you're like, oh, woke up, boundaries. But once you get through that process of more like, I'm going to establish this, and here it is. I think that makes a difference, because we tend to put so much on ourselves because we've moved our boundaries to accommodate other people, but not accommodating ourselves or putting ourselves first. And I think that's important. And depending, of course, where people are in their lives, but just, I think you come to a point where, like, for me, it's my health. Like, nope, I gotta put this up because otherwise I'm gonna get sick. I'm gonna be in the hospital. And it's not good. So but it's important to establish that.
Do you have any plugs or anything that you want to, other than your REI feature, go into REI and check out Tiffany?
Right now it's just the REI stuff. Black Ghost Run is still awesome, and check out local chapters. So yeah, still being a part of, I'm still the co-ambassador for Black Ghost Run here in Boston. And it's great to get women out here to work on their health, have a healthy lifestyle, and especially again, post-pandemic or after the pandemic, all that stress has been kind of pent up. So it's good just to either walk or run, but we definitely support women in their healthy lifestyle journeys. So still doing that. And we have great partnerships with REI and a couple of health clinics around the city. So I think that's important. My blog, again, you can see my weekly or daily runs. I guess now it's walking on my blog. Still trying to do that. And that's it, really.
What's the blog?
Run IC 50, RUNISEE 50. So basically it's what I see when I run, right? Which I think is interesting too, from my particular lens of, you see so much when you run. And so I'm so always observant of like, what's this? And every time I run, and it could be on the same route, but I always see things that are very different. So it makes you kind of stop and say, so lots of pretty pictures and kind of my thoughts of the day and all the stuff.
And then what's your Instagram handle? Because I know you post those daily pictures on Instagram.
Same thing, Run IC 50.
Thank you for catching up today. And I appreciate you doing this because I talk to you all the time, but I also just think it's really good to put this stuff out there because you have an amazing perspective on running and life in general. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's always fun. I appreciate, because we're in a time zone difference. I was just like, yes. So no, I appreciate anytime I get a chance to chat with you and catch up, because it makes me happy. Because again, I like badass women. So that's my I try to keep my circle like these are the badass women that I know, and end story. So anytime.
You can follow me personally at Jacalyn Gross. It's mostly pictures of running landscapes. You can follow UR Sportswear, that's letter U, the letter R Sportswear, on all social platforms. You can check out any of our products at ursportswear.com. And thank you for listening.